Hey everyone, Dan here. We are over the long weekend of July 4th. Today we're going to take a look at space. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps a lot. And also, if you are interested in receiving a once or twice per week email newsletter from me with additional trade ideas, tips, things that are just interesting that are happening in the markets, I will have in the description below a link to a Google form with where you can just drop your email. And once I get that list to 100, which I think we're only like 10 or 15 emails away from, then I'll start putting together the concept of the newsletter. And before I send you the first one, I will share with you the concept and the frequency and that sort of thing. And if you want to opt out at that time, you definitely will be able to. But this is to just sort of like get me to start to work on it, which is that like 100 email threshold. So if it sounds interesting, feel free to put your email there, and then you can decide in a month or two if you actually want to start receiving them or not when I reach back out. Okay, so a bunch of things to talk about with Virgin Galactic. One is the charting aspect. The other is the data aspect. So I think we'll kind of like hop back and forth a little bit because I would like to kind of start with some data, but I thought that we would have the chart here just because like for me it's a weird way to start a video not being on the chart, but also just to show like how long I've been tracking space for. And if we look back at the 6-month chart here, you'll see a ton of price action that I was plotting down here in the 20s because I've been like playing and looking at space for a very long time, and it was one of my favorite options plays for a long time. I remember when it was running up here into the 60s, I thought, my goodness, like nothing can stop this stock. And then when it came down, when everything was crashing, I was thinking, oh man, nothing can reverse trend on this stock, but it has reversed trend again. And it's been a wild ride, of course, as many stocks were over the past year and a half, but especially these growth type stocks at the beginning of the year had this really big sell-off into like March that then bled through into like May. Luckily, a bunch have been on recovery recently. Obviously, a big thing that has helped fuel space is, I lost my window here. Let's reset these. But a big thing that has helped this is the Wall Street Bets crowd. So you see here, this is the ticker sentiment from Swaggy Stocks, which is a cool site if you aren't familiar with it. But space here ranking 3rd. I assume that this is from everything, all the data that was collected on Friday. A little over 6% of the total comment volume, which if you were part of Wall Street Bets way back when it was just a couple 100,000 folks or even less, I think now it's over 10 million or something like that. So the comment volume has gotten insane. And so for them to consume that much is pretty crazy. 20 to 9 positive sentiment to negative sentiment. So over double the positive sentiment versus the negative. And down here you can actually see the time frame. So this looks like it's just through June. But you see here that the price of the stock is in gold. This is a really cool. So I just think whoever made this, it's designed really well. It's a very interesting thing. It's a very interesting project to undertake, and I'm kind of a big fan. So anyway, but you see the negative sentiment rising and peaking up there around the 26th, which was just a few days ago. But also, it peaked there, but the positive sentiment was peaking at the same time. So this is just to say there was just a ton of interest that picked up here, started a little bit on the 25th, then exploded on the 26th, died down a bit, and then came up to end the week pretty strong on July 2nd. And, the 3rd is a Saturday, but still tracking the volume because obviously it doesn't only flow through on the days that the market is open, because this is a subreddit. So this is always open. So that has me thinking actually that this might be from Saturday the 3rd, which is the day that I'm recording this video. To the extent that this helped fuel anything, that's certainly possible, certainly most likely. But yeah, the big run up here on the 26th. So if we go ahead and look, and we can zoom in our chart here a bit so we don't have to look at it that way. This crazy run on the 1st, but we see this crazy run here on the 25th happening, and so that's a bunch of what was happening. So it looks like the 26th was actually a weekend date. So a bunch of folks talking about it on that day after we went up on the 25th. The 25th, that had only gone up to this point on the chart. So sentiment still being way, way higher than it was when it first started to kick off that huge run up. If we have a look at the news cycle here too, we stretch back a few days. Obviously, look at all these stories within like just a day or two, but they're talking about the hype is already priced in. It's dropping because it got lifted off too fast, got pushed up. So there's a bunch of speculation here around like what's going to happen. It's a double downgrade from Bank of America. That was just 3 days ago. So a bunch of crazy things happening outside of, say, just the chart and the trend itself, with the retail interest, Wall Street bets driving that, and then analysts coming in and piling on and saying like, whoa, this isn't worth it. Like there's a darker side to the story. The stock is doomed to fail, whatever they typically say. I feel like it's like the things that they always say about Palantir too, although I don't know that that's been super high in any Wall Street bets sort of like sentiment lately, but it used to be like pretty common in there. But analysts and news outlets, for whatever reason, have seemed to always hate Palantir. But yeah, so to the degree to which this is driving a bunch of things, it looks like it's still playing a factor to me, because again, it kicked off down here, and then it's still riding high since then. So pretty interesting. And also, if you look over here, top stonks, of course, coming from Wall Street bets as well. And this has the pre-market buzz, which that I assume was picking up yesterday. Maybe it's also picking up today and just time-stamping it as though if the market were open, it would have been pre-markets. But comment volume over 7 days, and you see the comments peaking up here on this chart at 85 on the 1st of July. And these are timestamped by half hour, I believe. Yeah. So this was at like 7 o'clock in the evening. So still a bunch of hype and interest around from all of these different sites as well, Twitch and 4chan. Options positions that have been sort of called out. Some put positions at a 30 strike expiration 7-2. So I guess that didn't really play out that well. But then neither did these either. I don't think it even closed. Did it close above 45? In the after hours, I guess, 45.20. So this is where we sit with like the sentiment and things like that. Now, let's kind of take a look at the data, and then we'll flip into the chart and go heavy into the trend analysis and the charting. 7-1, let me flip here. We should have 7-2 data on the shorts coming in. Holy cow. Short volume ratio, I've never seen one this high. And I look at various tickers with this short volume ratio on Fintel every single day. So I've looked at hundreds and hundreds of examples of these. I think the highest that I've seen before was in the 50s. I've never seen something over 85. So there was a total volume on Friday, the 2nd of July, of 36 million shares. And they're saying that the short volume of that was over 30.5 million. So that is insanity if that's the case. And if that's the case, which I have no reason to believe that it's wrong, the fails to deliver that we would be looking for from 7-2, that's going to be really interesting to see. Of folks who bought those over 30 million shares that were sold short, how many of them actually received the share in the settlement period? and how many of them are going to be sitting with an IOU. And so looking 30 days after July 2nd, leading up to that day, so day 20, probably 25, 26, 27, something like that, how much of a run-up are we going to see from short sellers potentially having to buy shares on the open markets to deliver those stocks that they've already sold? That is insanity. I hadn't seen that before. Obviously, I had refreshed the chart to get here. So that's surprising to me. Speaking of the fails to deliver, this is the fails to deliver from the middle of, well, I guess we'll call it the second half of May to the first half of June. And so it's about a 1 month span. And, you know, we see here there's areas in which the fails to deliver do creep up, which can have an impact on future price action. I'll say more about that in the days ahead. If you want to look at my SoFi video from last night, from Friday night, the 2nd of July, I talk extensively about it in that video because there's some strong correlations that I draw there. Oh, but also the AMC video from last night, July 2nd, same thing. I talk about it pretty extensively there. I didn't plan to in this one because I didn't know that there was an 85 short volume ratio on Virgin Galactic yesterday. So holy cow, more to be seen on that for sure. On the Ortex side of things, I guess I should refresh this as well. They have percentage of the free float on loan, 16.49. They have Friday's short interest going down 9%, so 15.5% of the float being shorted by their estimation. So we'll see it, you know, what that looks like on Monday, or I guess on Tuesday. Utilization creeping up. So as this gets close to 100%, what 100% means, if you're not familiar, it means that all the shares available to borrow or lend at a lending program have in fact been lent. So my voice cracking there under the pure shock of that daily short volume of 85.31. Okay. I guess the other thing that we could quickly look at here is the feed from interactive brokers provided by iBorrowDesk. You know, this shows the available shares coming down into, you know, just a couple million at interactive brokers, but in the days preceding, it had been down much lower than that. The reason that I wanted to look at this data was presuming that as the stock price shot up, that a bunch of short sellers would come in order to try to take advantage of what they would see as like an overextended price, an overly hyped stock being, you know, quite probable to topple in the near future. So putting some added pressure, just sort of like putting your finger on the scale there and kind of helping push it along a little bit and making profit that way. So we see them pile in quite a bit on the 30th of June. And what happened on the 30th of June? Well, we had this big bleed down the day before, and that continued strongly through the pre-markets, and then it tried to recover throughout the midday and then sort of got suppressed down a little bit more and continued down the following day, certainly from you know, a ton of pressure that it was incurring there. So just a couple of really wild you know, run-ups and then sell-offs over just a course of a few days. So interesting times for space, that's for sure. So it's almost weird when one of these gets caught up in this kind of a situation that you've been tracking for so long, because you sort of have your mind wrapped around like how you play this stock and how it acts and things like that, and then you just have to toss that all out the window because you know, there's a bunch of other factors that come into play. But that said, let's chart some potential bounce zones, some potential upper price targets, some immediate support and resistance, things like that. So I'm going to pull in the 1 month chart here with the 1 hour time frames, and you know, basically it had just kind of like found this floor here at 27.55 that I had been looking at before, and then built off of that floor and was still just kind of like building another floor here in like the mid 30s, and then all of a sudden it just went crazy around the 22nd of June. I can't recall off the top of my head if that was when the launch happened. I assume so, but volatility, options traders. Okay. I mean, they aren't saying specifically the launch, but anyway, let's grab some zones here. So if you're not familiar with my videos, the way that I try to grab these support and resistance zones is I look for areas of previous strong buying and selling pressure, and those are indicated by topping out, like you see here, and bottoming out, like you see here. So there's a lot of buying pressure here, keeping the stock from falling further, and there's a lot of selling pressure here, keeping the stock from going up higher. And so the areas, especially in which there's both topping out and bottoming out, obviously within different periods of time, but those are extra strong zones. There's actually a little bit of one here. So you see resistance, 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 and then support here. This is a little bit of a wacky time frame because of the crazy movement in such brief periods, but we are going to look left, which is look back in time to when the stock ran up previously and try to grab some additional data from that in order to chart some zones. But for now, what I would look for in the very near term is an initial 43.34 support. Now just know that that's a support zone that has some legitimacy to it, but space has been so erratic, so volatile, as we would say, that it could just blow right through that. For sure. It could absolutely fall through. And if it does, then I would expect that the next really strong zone, and this one is going to be much stronger because you have support here, resistance here, near resistance here, that 39.36. So just under $40, you might see it catch itself a little bit. It's also some sort of psychological, pressure that comes in with these round numbers, 45, 40, 50, 55, things like that. Those are the ones that I would grab from this kind of messy price action. Let's go back here to when the stock previously ran up and see what we can grab from here. And we can see how well these line up. So these line up well with previous support and resistance. So that's good. This is just a really tight end zone. I don't like to have those less than $1 apart, but there's something there that's probably worth keeping an eye out for. Actually, what I may do is I may move this up based on the chart here and throw that there instead. I think it's probably a better zone based on less confined spiky price action. In addition to that, you have a zone there. And again, we're grabbing this from the previous price activity, the last time that it ran up into this zone, in order to see where the buying and the selling pressure in large quantities, in large volume, was, in order to try to inform what may happen this time as it tries to breach potentially all-time highs again. Okay, so these are the areas that I would look for as we try to get ourselves through. Yeah, so we see a lot of these lining up pretty nicely. It's hard to tell in this type of an area, but down here you do see it knocking off of this area. Now the question is, it blew through several zones on the way up, so it naturally blew through them on the way down. That's not uncommon. The question is if it can find a floor. So for example, if it's starting a slight upper trend line here that it's following, I don't know if this extends back, but let's start it here. But if this does continue and it has this floor here that it's working with, I'm trying to see if this extends back through this range here. Yeah, so if it sort of ends up doing this, which is certainly questionable, the thing to look for would be, okay, now hitting more sort of precise support and resistance on these zones as opposed to blowing up through them and blowing down through them very, very quickly and aggressively. If it remains super volatile, that stuff is still going to be the case. But once it starts to find a new floor, if that floor is in the 40s or the 50s or back down into the 20s and 30s, who knows? But once it does establish that floor, then I would expect it to start building its way up or down based on these price levels. So that's what I would look for in the coming days ahead. The big question is just going to be, what's the volatility look like? The RSI is sitting pretty low right now, definitely closer to oversold than overbought, so that might allow for some buying pressure to come in, might allow it to build up and follow that trend line up, or even do something a little crazier. Of course, bearish momentum predominates at the moment in space, but it is closing the real estate between the MACD and the signal line, which could indicate that it's going to cross over in a bullish pattern and try to run up. Now you see this high area here followed by this very low area here. So overall, the bullish momentum dying down quite a bit. The question will be, can it have another run up and press up here into the 4s and the 5s on the MACD line in order to regain, sort of like put the bullish momentum back in play predominantly. All right, well, that will do it for this one. I wish you the best if you're in space. It's definitely going to be an interesting ride, and I can't wait to see how it plays out. As things evolve and things seem interesting, or if you're interested, if folks seem interested in this, I would be happy to put out relatively frequent space videos for the time being, at least while the activity and volatility is high around it, but let's see how it goes. All right, well, thanks a bunch for watching. Feel free to share these videos on Reddit, Twitter, Facebook, what have you. That helps a lot, and I appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video.